Welcome to the Law Firm of Tomorrow, presented by Morris Tabush and Darragh Fitzpatrick. To learn about today's presenters and their extensive experience in the IT and cloud computing industry, you'll find their bios at tabush.com.
Hi, I'm Darragh Fitzpatrick. Prior to Morris discussing the Law Firm of Tomorrow, for those unfamiliar with our firm, I just wanted to give you a brief introduction as to what we do. We deliver IT and cloud services for small to mid-sized law firms. We design, build, manage, secure, and support their IT systems and have been doing so since 2000. We've been managing and delivering cloud services since 2003, before the term cloud had even been used. We are strongly interested and heavily involved in leveraging cloud services for the law firms we work with. Why? Cloud allows us to simplify the IT operations of law firms like yours. Simplicity means less complexity, which means less problems. With that in mind, over the last couple of years, we have developed our own desktop as a service solution called BoxTop. On that note, I'd like to pass it off now to Morris, who will discuss the Law Firm of Tomorrow.
Good afternoon, everybody. I'm Morris Tabush. It's great to be here today. Unfortunately, I don't have a really cool Irish accent like my partner Darragh, but we'll have to make do with what I've got. So for those of you who haven't already guessed, today's webinar is focused on cloud computing for the Law Firm of Tomorrow. So the first thing I'd like to do is discuss what is the cloud. We all hear the word. Some of us know what it is. Some of us use iCloud. But what is cloud? So in a nutshell, cloud computing means computing resources delivered to you via an internet connection. And by that I mean that the things that a few years ago you may have gotten from servers in your office, such as email, shared files, Citrix, maybe certain applications, those services lived on servers in a closet or under a desk. Companies own those servers. They maintained them. They were responsible for them. Every few years they would replace them or expand them. And with cloud, those servers no longer live within your walls or even owned by you, the customer. They live in remote data centers, and they're owned and managed by cloud service providers. Now, what's a data center, you may ask? In short, data centers are like bank vaults, but for servers. They're large buildings, kind of like the one you see here on the left, physically built to withstand just about anything, as well built with excess power, redundancies, gobs of capacity, cooling, and they're basically built, like I said, to be vaults for servers, buildings that are never supposed to go down. But all of this is really a means to an end. All these servers and data centers and cloud, we're here to talk about the Law Firm of Tomorrow. And before we get to tomorrow, let's talk about the Law Firm of today. Now, of course, the Law Firm of today has partners, associates, paralegals, clients, matters, and of course, billing. You can never live without that part. Unfortunately, the Law Firm of today has all of these challenges too. And these are the things that get in the way of clients, matters, work, and billing. How many times has there been an IT issue which causes some downtime, frustration, and has some cost associated with it to fix or upgrade it? Then there's usually a post-mortem meeting with the IT person where there's some sort of blame put on the old system, or maybe a proposal that they had handed you 6 months ago had never been approved, and that's why you had the outage. Or the hardware had an issue, or the software had an issue, or the hardware and software had an issue with each other. As a fellow business owner, I know what it's like to balance client work, business development, HR, cash flow, operations, and everything else. This is what we call reality. Sometimes we just don't have time to pay attention to all of these things when we're supposed to. And why? Because when you're lawyers or legal administrators, you're focused on that. Whether you manage the firm or you practice law, no matter how much you rely on IT or how much you may know about it, it's not your core competency or your focus. So you hire a service provider or an IT director to handle it for you, to support the systems, and they tell you they'll do it all. They'll be proactive, they'll monitor, they'll respond quickly, etc. And very often, they do all of that. But because they're your systems, there's issues from time to time. Things break. Redundancies don't work as planned. Servers need to be replaced or upgraded. They run out of capacity. How many times do you feel like it never stops? No matter who services your system, they're still your system. And as soon as you finish doing one upgrade or spending a few dollars on one thing, boom, along comes the next one. Now, these thoughts are nothing novel. But the reality for small firms, and by small I typically mean under 40 or 50 employees, the reality is that IT is not nearly as perfect as the picture that's painted at the outset. Now with all of that, how did we get to where we are today? Today, in 2017, a lot is available in the cloud. And why is this? Why is it that all of a sudden we can get file sharing, practice management software, email systems, remote access, even our phone systems through the cloud? Why does it suddenly make sense to put all these parts of our business in this mysterious place called the cloud? In short, it is that technology over the last 20 years has progressed so rapidly that it's enabled these cloud services. The number one enabler in this is connectivity. Think about it. 20 years ago, in 1997, we were using 56K modems, and that was the fastest of them. In 2001, a T1 line was top of the line. For $1,500 a month, you got a 1.5 megabit connection to the internet that was always on. That was 30 times the speed of your 56K modem. Today, May 2nd, 2017, the Verizon LTE signal to my iPhone is about 10 megabits, so it's about 7 times as fast as a T1 line. And that goes anywhere in the country, wherever I am. The cable modem that I have at home is 50 megabits, and the fiber in our office is 200 megabits, and we pay way less than $1,500 for that. So today, because we're all connected so fast, so reliably from all of our devices, just about anywhere we are, as well as some other technologies progressing, it only makes logical sense to have all of these services delivered from the cloud instead of locally owned systems. Again, in 1997, our connection to the outside world was slow and took up a phone line. Today, it's really fast and it's always on. Kind of like banks. It always made sense to keep your money in a bank, but these days, with an ATM at every corner, online banking, online bill pay, it makes more sense than ever. Or delivery service like FedEx and UPS. Why would you send a box yourself via a private jet carrier when you could print a label, slap it on a box, and drop it at the nearest UPS store and have it there overnight? So tomorrow, what's that all about? Well, the services that we just spoke about are all really great, but each of them moves a certain piece of your firm to the cloud. You'll get some benefits. For example, if you move your phone system to the cloud, you don't have to worry about having an on-premise PBX and paying for expensive lines. But that only takes care of your phones. And at the same time, each of these systems presents certain challenges, like maybe changing a little bit the way you work or the way your team functions, or being semi-productive when mobile because each piece is a separate and disparate part of your infrastructure. So how do you fully leverage the cloud? You know, people used to say cloud is the future, and that was in 2012. Today, 5 years later, cloud is the present. The stuff from last slide, the email, the applications, the time and billing, the phone systems, that's actually getting kind of stale. Many companies have been on this for several years already, maybe 3 or 4 years. And when I say 3 or 4 years, that's human years, not computer years, which are kind of like dog years. So what's next? How does a firm fully leverage the cloud? So desktop as a service is one of the most recent things to have moved to the cloud. And what do I mean by this? Well, in short, the desktop PC and the servers, the thing that you're probably looking at right now behind your monitor or under your desk, and those servers that sit back in a closet somewhere, those pieces go away and they move to the cloud. The only thing that stays in your office and on your desk are the input-output devices, things like a keyboard, a screen, a mouse, maybe a webcam, a printer, a scanner, speakers. But the guts, the important parts of the network, the pieces where all the work is done, go away into the cloud. And why does this happen, or why is this beneficial? Because those are the most critical pieces. Those desktop computers and those servers, that's where the most can go wrong. Furthermore, that desktop computer, as much as applications may move to the cloud, the desktop is that amalgamation point of all your applications, all of your cloud services, your documents, your utilities, maybe some plugins that you have to do things like data scrubbing or email validation, personalizations, little programs that you may have installed separate from the IT department, etc. the end of the day, there's nothing as functional for somebody, especially a busy professional, as their own desktop with their own stuff on it. And think about the challenges that it presents when you have that desktop, maybe it's a Dell or an IBM or an HP computer sitting on your desk. Every so often, it slows down, needs to be cleaned up. Piece of hardware could malfunction. Maybe it's a power supply, maybe it's a motherboard, maybe it's a hard drive, and the machine basically won't function until that part is replaced. If your hard drive fails, you're looking at data loss. Even with backups, it's always a couple of hours or a day at best to recover everything. Then there's remote access. You may have a system like a Citrix or a terminal server for when people are working from the road, but that's not their actual desktop. It's just what the IT department has deemed absolutely necessary. Or maybe people will use something like Go to My PC, which is great for once in a while or when you're stuck in a jam. But for regular everyday use, it's really, really slow. And if for some reason your computer is offline or frozen, well, there's nothing to really go into. From a security standpoint, especially when we're dealing with laptops, what happens if that machine suddenly goes missing? Now, we keep talking about DAS, and Darragh earlier today mentioned something called BoxTop. So just to clear up, BoxTop is actually a DAS platform that we've created, which we launched about 2 years ago, but there are many other DAS platforms, and each one has its own little nuances and pros and cons. So we said what desktop as a service is. We said why go to desktop as a service. The question is, where do those desktops now live? Like we spoke a few slides earlier, when your desktops go to the cloud, they're going into one of these data center buildings. Now, depending on who your provider is, that data center can physically be anywhere. It may be a public infrastructure, it may be a private cloud. But the data will live in that data center on servers and storage equipment in a mission-critical, quote-unquote, server vault. How? How do you access your desktops once they're in a data center? Basically, you log in from any screen with any internet connection. It doesn't matter where you're coming from. I like to compare desktop as a service to Netflix, which most of us are familiar with. I use Netflix all the time. I may watch it from my iPad, from my smart TV. I have an Apple TV in one of the rooms in the house. Sometimes I'll even download shows to my phone and watch them on the train when I'm offline. The important thing is that it doesn't really matter what screen or what device I'm using, because Netflix looks the same once it's launched and it remembers exactly where I was at every episode. And desktop as a service is a very similar concept. It looks the same, it feels the same, and it doesn't matter what device you're using. Any internet-connected screen will work. And when did this all come about? Well, desktop as a service, or VDI, virtual desktop infrastructure, started to be popular around 4 years ago. Many of the large firms, including law firms, financial services firms, were using it then. A lot of the larger ones were building it themselves. It really got popular, however, about 2 years ago in 2015, coincidentally the year that we launched. Why did it get popular 2 years ago? Like I explained earlier, connectivity kept improving and getting better, and the technology. There was a tremendous investment over the last 3 or 4 years in really, really developing desktop as a service technologies to make them feel just like a desktop, not like a remote session anymore. Before 2 years ago, before 2015, it was still good, but it was a little sluggish, it was a little clunky. Today, with the right hardware and the right configuration, it actually looks and feels faster than most desktop computers. But what does that mean to us? Whether we're attorneys or law firm administrators, at the end of the day, what does all of this mean to us? What happens is, the law firm of yesterday, all of these pieces on the left, like we said, some of them may live on servers in the office, some may live in different cloud providers' infrastructures. We may be responsible for some, we may not be responsible for others. All of these go away into the cloud, and it makes you the law firm of tomorrow. Now, why do this? After all, you're all sitting on your computers right now, and they're working. So who really cares if they're here or if they're out there? Well, mainly, it's convenience. In the law firm of tomorrow, IT becomes something we simply use and we don't think about. I use my desktop anywhere I am, at my desk, in the conference room, at home, on my laptop. Even once in a while, I'll pull it up on my iPhone. It's a little small and I've got to squint pretty hard, but when I'm in a jam and I need something, it works. It doesn't matter where I am. It's the exact same desktop with all my applications, my utilities, my folders, my programs, exactly where I left off. Secondly, with desktop as a service, everyone in the company all of a sudden has the same computer. So there's uniformity across the board. There's no need to worry about replacing old computers. And note that I say in the company or the firm, not the office, because more and more of today's business is being done outside of the four walls that are listed on your lease. Work from home for most firms is part of the rules, not an exception to them anymore. And because your desktops and servers are in the cloud provider does all of the backups, the security, the patches, and the maintenance. We no longer have to worry about things like hard drives crashing, files being deleted accidentally, or leaving sensitive files open on my home computer or on the desktop because I was working on them, and who knows where they may end up. Now, I keep saying we, not in the royal sense, where I mean you guys. If you remember the old Hair Club for Men ads where the guy said, "I'm not just the president, I'm also a customer," well, it's the same here. We're very proud to eat our own dog food, and we actually run our own business on Boxtop. Now, being in the cloud also means that we don't have to be constantly upgrading things like servers, storage space, backups, disaster recovery, or renewing licenses. They're all built in. Again, if you're using anything out in the cloud right now, you know that when it's set up right, you set it and forget it. I'm hoping you all repeat it after me, even though you're on mute. I can't really tell. And that's what the law firm of tomorrow is. Everything IT is moved to the cloud, from the data to the desktops, from the servers to the security and the programs and even the phones. And they can fully leverage any system, be it an on-premise application or one of the newer cloud applications, without any limitations. Once your infrastructure and your desktops are in the cloud, any application will work. It doesn't matter if that application is supposedly cloud or not, because the desktops become cloud. Some other things about the law firm of tomorrow. Well, the firm still has multiple applications, and most users, aside from what the firm deploys, will have their own individual apps tailored to their specific job functions or the way that they work. And because people are creative and we don't want to inhibit them in any way, we should allow them to do things their own way and not put them onto such a rigid platform where they can only use exactly what the IT department approves. And because it's the future, everything works beautifully. There's no hard drive crashes or desktop blue screening. There's no downtime from viruses or paying ransom in Bitcoin to retrieve your files. There's no servers that run out of space or backups that don't work when we need them to. For lawyers, working from anywhere, a client's office, their house, Starbucks, is seamless, fully functional, and fully secure. There's no worries about being shut down due to a natural disaster, like a weather incident. And you guys, the lawyers, can focus on doing your job, be that practicing law, growing your firm, spending time with clients, or whatever helps you achieve your goals. Instead of owning everything and outsourcing the support, having to look at proposals every few months for things that you don't really understand what they do, you just see the number on them and you're being told you need to do it, the law firm of tomorrow runs completely in the cloud. And once your desktops are in the cloud, any application, traditional cloud or hybrid, will run on it. Most desktop as a service providers support most Windows applications. Of course, it depends specifically on the platform they use. But like I said, any application becomes a cloud application. To lawyers like yourselves, it means getting rid of the constant stream of IT headaches, upgrades, repairs, outages, excuses, proposals, invoices, and things that are consuming your time. When you're consuming IT as a service, it's a managed, secure, and scalable system. It means that things seem, for the most part, to look and feel the same. A desktop in the cloud feels just like a desktop on your desk. But now you can focus on your firm and your clients. So why now? Why are we talking about this here in 2017? Where was it in 2007 or in 1997? Well, I'm going to roll back a little bit further than that. Up until the late 19th century, for those of you who can go far back in history, factories actually located themselves near sources of power, which at the time were riverbanks mostly. And they built special systems in each factory to get that energy from the turbines in the river into their machinery. Then, in the early 20th century, when electricity was discovered and systems to distribute it over copper wires were invented, suddenly a factory can be anywhere because their electricity can be delivered to them. Up until 15 years ago, if you needed to buy something and have it the same day, you drove to a store and hoped they were giving you a good price. There was no same-day delivery. Up until 10 years ago, in 2007, if you wanted to watch a movie at home, you had to go to Blockbuster, browse through the videos, and hope that they had it in stock. And of course, remember to rewind it before you returned it. And as a business, if you wanted a phone system with voicemail, auto attendant, multiple lines, direct dial, you bought a phone system. If you wanted business IT with your own email, shared files, networked applications, and reliable backups, you bought servers and put them in your office. And you know what? 10 years ago, that made perfect sense. But today, in 2017, technology has changed all of this. Just like you use companies like FedEx, Con Ed, and Verizon, you don't think about how they get their packages to the destinations, or how they get 120 volts of electricity into those outlets on your wall, or how the LTE signal gets to your smartphone. All you know is you pay them, and they do it. And if there's a problem on their end, they fix it really, really quickly, often without you even knowing. The law firm of tomorrow does the same for their IT. They put it completely in the cloud. Desktops, applications, storage, security, the works. The users, they log in and see all their programs and files, just like they normally do, but from like they normally do now, but from any screen securely. When they're done, they log off. Very simple. They trust the cloud provider with their systems and their data because they know the provider is doing a much better job and cares more about the systems than they can themselves. And they focus on being lawyers. February 16th, 2016, just a little over a year ago, 7:25 a.m. Picture this. It's a Tuesday morning right after President's Day weekend in New York City. It has been bitter cold since Sunday. Yesterday, Monday, it was actually in the single digits. Robert, the managing partner at GRW, gets off the elevator on the third floor of his office building, a Class A facility in Lower Manhattan, pictured on the left. He unlocks the front door, as he's always the first one in the mornings, and he pauses. He hears something. He walks towards the sound, about 30 feet down the hall, and stops. There's water everywhere. Over the weekend, a pipe had burst in the ceiling a few feet from his IT closet, and sometime in the last day or so, the flooding started. He turns around, walks out, emails his 20 or so employees to work from home for the next few days, gets in his car, and leaves. Very cool, very calm. Why was he so cool and calm? His 20-person law firm, which is really, really busy, couldn't occupy their office for the next few days. Do the math. 20 people, an average of $400 an hour, 8 hours a day, it's going to add up pretty quickly. He was calm because he was prepared. You see, a year earlier, Robert had taken his firm from yesterday to tomorrow. He moved to the cloud. His phone service, his email, his document management, and his desktops all lived completely in the cloud. Now, one of the impetuses for this was Hurricane Sandy in 2012. Being in Lower Manhattan, his building was without power for 5 days, during which only his email and his time and billing systems had been in the cloud. That definitely helped, but with just email and time and billing, he was about 20% productive. Think about how much more than those two systems are actually required to properly do your job and service your clients. Being the forward-thinking strategist that he is, he pressured us about cloud and was one of the first beta users on BoxTop, our desktop as a service platform. By late 2015, his firm was completely in the cloud, so asking 20 people to work from home for a week was a no-brainer. People literally picked up exactly where they left off with full functionality, including local printing, scanning if they had a scanner at home, every application and utility, their saved passwords, and all of this at the exact same speed they were used to as if they were sitting at their desk in the office. Not like a remote session, which I like to compare to a TV news reporter from the battleground in Afghanistan via satellite with that 3-second delay. Robert took his firm to tomorrow. Many other law and professional services firms have done the same. Don't let tomorrow pass you by. Get ahead of the game. Now, just so we're all on the same page, The benefits of becoming the law firm of tomorrow or going all cloud are huge, but they may not be so obvious or exciting on day one. With cloud, sure, there may be a major disaster that you're able to withstand, but much more likely, what's going to happen is that the little issues that you're used to happening will just suddenly stop. Things like random PC blue screens, hard drive crashes, viruses or ransomware destroying data, files getting lost, people having problems with VPN or logging in remotely, security concerns, etc. They'll kind of like just go away. Almost like being vaccinated. If you go get a flu shot, you're not going to feel better right away. In fact, you may even feel sluggish for a day or two after the shot. And you're not going to go hug everybody you know who just had the flu just because you got the vaccination. But you will live a healthier and better protected life. With desktop as a service, you won't know every single time that it didn't crash or didn't get a virus. It's just going to work. And then there will be those times when you realize the benefits and where it saved you. In fact, about 3 months ago, I was actually scheduled to fly out to Chicago to deliver this same exact presentation to a group of attorneys at an event in Chicago. That Sunday, they predicted a massive snowstorm coming to New York. All of a sudden, my travel plans got changed around. On Monday, couldn't make it into New York, into the office, so I worked from home unexpectedly for a day. Tuesday morning, my flight got changed, had to fly a little early to Chicago. But because we're all in the cloud, I never missed a beat. I never worried for a minute. I stayed focused on the business, on our clients, and on my job. And that's just what the law firm of tomorrow can do. Now, the crazy thing is, I've done about 5 different presentations on cloud computing over the last 4 years or so. I used to say cloud is the future for business, but it's not anymore. Cloud is the present. It's here. It's not going anywhere. And not going cloud is simply living in the past. Thank you, everybody. I think we have a little bit of time for Q&A. Sarah, you want to just confirm that and see if we have any questions that have come in?
Yeah, thank you, Morris and Darragh. So now we're going to take some questions. Feel free to keep adding questions into the question module that you should see on your screen, and I will go through some that we already have. So the first question is, you mentioned private and public cloud. What's the difference?
Okay, so that's a great question. Public cloud is something like an Amazon Web Services or Microsoft Azure, which you've probably heard of both of them. In those situations, a company like Amazon or Microsoft or Google, which has a tremendously massive cloud infrastructure, will allow you or us, either a provider or an end user, to buy certain services in their cloud. I like to equate that to, they'll sell you certain ingredients. Maybe you need a little processing, maybe you need some storage, maybe you need some bandwidth. They'll sell you those services, and then you, the customer, can mix and match them or take those ingredients and create a recipe however you want, and that recipe will live in their public infrastructure along with tens of thousands of other companies. You don't really know where that is. You don't know any of the details. You just know you pay them for a few megabytes here, a few gigabytes there, and a few megahertz somewhere else, and somehow they deliver it to you. Private cloud, on the other hand, which is what we offer, means that we don't use any third parties to deliver our cloud services. We actually own our own equipment in our own data center, and we fully operate it ourselves. The reasons we do this, number one, to keep it almost like a gated community, so we're very careful about who's allowed into our private cloud. Number two, a lot of the things that we've achieved with BoxTop need very, very specialized infrastructure, equipment, and configurations, and can't be done on a public cloud. But basically, that is the difference. Private means, we control it. We know exactly where it is, what it is, how it works, and we support it ourselves. In public, you're relying on a much bigger company for it, and there's really a very big abstraction layer where you don't know what's happening in the background. And for a lot of general day-to-day things like file storage or databases, public cloud is actually a really good option for those types of applications.
Okay, great, thanks. And our next question is, the partners in our firm don't trust the cloud. They're concerned that our data will be at risk if we do anything in the cloud. What would you say to them?
What I would say to those partners is, The cloud, if they understood how the cloud worked, it's actually much more secure than what they're doing now. And the reason is, wherever that data currently sits, on a server or several servers, those servers are already connected to the internet. So they're technically just as accessible, if anything less secure than what's in the cloud, number one. Kind of like saying, well, I don't trust the bank, so I'm going to put a safe in my office and keep all of my life savings in that safe. Now, you can do that, but Chase or Citibank or Wells Fargo, they're probably a little bit more secure than you can ever be. Furthermore, while those partners may not trust the cloud, I'm willing to bet that they're already using the cloud. They just don't know it. But their data more than likely does sit in the cloud. At the end of the day, every cloud, look, I can't speak for every cloud provider because everybody does things differently. And it's definitely important for any business, especially law firms, to study their cloud providers and vet them because of privacy laws. They've got to have a very good privacy policy. They've got to be compliant with all the ethics regulations. Certain states and certain types of law have different requirements. But more than likely, if you do things right, you will be much more secure in the cloud than you would be in a traditional on-premise implementation.
So the next question, Darragh, if you could answer this one. What case management software programs are our clients using? And do you assist with the migration to the cloud of that case management software? For instance, the person asking this question says that they use TrialWorks and are wondering if any of our clients use TrialWorks with BoxTop.
So there's multiple different practice management systems that clients use and use them in multiple different ways. We don't have a company that uses TrialWorks. However, firstly, most of our clients, actually their practice management system is more than likely already in the cloud. That's something that has been a best practice probably over the last 3 years, and most practice management systems do have a cloud offering. Secondly, BoxTop is a Windows-based system, so any Windows-based platform, be it a practice management system or any other type of line of business application, if it's only a billing system, for instance, will work in BoxTop because it's a Windows PC. And that's one of the nicest things about BoxTop when you're talking about making the decision to roll it out, or desktop as a service, when you're talking about rolling it out to your entire company, is that there's no change. You switch on the monitor, it's a Windows PC with the same start menu, with the same desktop icons, with the same programs, with the same versions that everybody used before. So really, the nature of the change when you go to a desktop as a service model such as BoxTop is just the nature that you don't have a PC on your desk, so people are trying to figure out why they have more space for their feet. That's really the biggest change, is the concept. So again, any practice management system, if it's Windows-based, will work in BoxTop. Most of our clients, when it comes to practice management systems, are already in the cloud for that type of application.
Great, thanks, Darragh. And another question for you, Darragh. This one is, we've never had a full-time IT person, but wondering if we need to hire an IT person to manage something like this desktop as a service product.
So the nature of a desktop as a service means that a lot of the complexity from a management standpoint is removed from your physical space, so your offices or your workplace. And most companies under 100 people, that's what the person is dealing with that will be in the IT department. The nature of BoxTop or desktop as a service means that as the complexity is removed, there's less for that person to do. There's less for them to need to control. And even outside of a day-to-day support and operational standpoint, from a strategic standpoint, if the person was going to be looking at backups or business continuity or security or allowing for mobility, again, when you enter a desktop as a service ecosystem such as BoxTop, that's all included. And that service and functionality is inherent in the solution. So moving to a situation like this, moving to a solution like this really reduces the need for an IT person. Staying with traditional infrastructure, that really depends on the needs of the users, the complexity of the systems that are in place, the need to think strategically in terms of maybe how your business is scaling. Staying with the traditional infrastructure could mean you have to hire an internal IT person. Rule of thumb with the 100 or so companies that we work with, I would say companies with staff over 75 people in traditional infrastructure that wouldn't look at something like BoxTop may have an IT person, and then partner with a company like ours that does managed services also, as it said in the beginning of the slide, to provide extra backup and layers of services that one individual could not manage.
Okay, thanks, Darragh. And Morris, if you could take this one. We already use several cloud applications and a cloud-based email, so why would we also need a desktop in the cloud if we can just log in remotely using a system that we already have?
So when you move in your current setup, you've got each piece is in a cloud. What happens is those are all separate cloud infrastructures. Some of the systems may require local thin applications or thick applications, such as a plugin or a module or an add-on or an integration. And again, without knowing your specific firm setup, if you were to go home right now or you were to get a brand new laptop right now and you turn it on, how quickly can you be fully up and running with everything you need? That's the first question I would ask. I'm guessing that certain pieces are not in the cloud. Again, your time and billing might be, your email might be, you may be using data storage in the cloud, but there's probably certain things that are not. The next question is what happens if somebody's desktop were to go down right now? Number one, is there any local data on it? Maybe they didn't save everything on the cloud. Number two, if it's stolen, is the local data, if you're using a system like a Dropbox or a Box, that's cloud-based, but it synchronizes everything down to the endpoint. So if that's a laptop and it gets stolen, that data all sits on that laptop unless it's somehow otherwise protected. And how long would it take to get something up and running? How productive are they when they work remotely? Some firms, again, that use systems like Box or Dropbox, if the attorneys want to work from home, they have to open their local copy of Word or Excel, or of Word. They may not have all the plugins that they need. They then have to download Dropbox files onto the desktop, work on them, and remember to re-upload them and delete them. From a privacy standpoint, some of the law firms are not so okay with that. So what happens is when you move your entire desktop to the cloud, your cloud applications move, your on-premise or local applications move, and that entire desktop goes with you anywhere you go. For some people, if they just use one or two applications that are cloud, they may not see a huge advantage to it. But most people we've surveyed have a mix of local, cloud-based, and hybrid applications, and they want to be free to keep choosing those. A lot of firms use something like a TrialWorks or a Tabs or a Time Matters, and they're very used to it, and it works really well for them. And they don't want to move to one of these newer cloud-based systems because they like what they have. So this enables them to really choose anything they want and move everything to the cloud in one fell swoop.
Okay, I think we're going to try and wrap up soon. So we just have one more question here. And Darragh, if you could maybe answer this one. You mentioned a little bit about security, but could you tell us a little bit more about security and privacy when it comes to using things like desktop as a service?
So I think this may relate somewhat to the question that was asked earlier. The first thing to say is that when you're moving to the cloud, you really need to be vetting your provider, as Morris stated. We actually have a nice piece of content that if anybody wants to review, we can send to you that talks about the type of questions you should ask. The second thing is when you're moving to the cloud, especially for smaller businesses, so I would say businesses under 50, 100 staff, you're generally elevating the level of security that you have in place. Morris also alluded to that. With regard to desktop as a service platform, the type of infrastructure that's built in a private type of cloud setting that Morris discussed earlier means that the type of equipment, the inherent redundancies that are in place, the specific security layers that are put in place are all based on very strong enterprise level standards and best practices that allow for you to function at a high level of efficiency and productivity and performance, but put in a very, very strong gate and multiple gates at that, actually, to prevent your data being compromised, to prevent the system being compromised in a way that causes a full outage. Although, as one of the things we always talk about when vetting a cloud vendor is to say that no system has 100% uptime. So these are the things that when you're moving to a desktop as a service environment, you're automatically getting as part and parcel of the solution that you're purchasing. Outside of that, things that law firms have to specifically look at, I guess, is where they're doing business, the type of law they're practicing, and the type of industries they're working in, their clients are working in, because there are certain compliances that have to be adhered to, and those compliance policies can change based on the type of business and, as I said, industry that you're working in. The major compliances that need to be adhered to, business standards like Sarbanes-Oxley and SAS 90 that overlay into legal and financial industries, most desktop as a service solutions are adhering and meeting those requirements. But there could be very specific things that you may have to talk about with regards, or look into with regards the data that you need protecting. We were looking at, for instance, law firms in Canada that want to use our desktop as a service platform, and we have been working through with them some of their concerns. It actually ended up that the law firms, most of the law firms that had this concern was not really a compliance or security concern. There was a small percentage that were in a part of Canada that did have to look at the notion of some of their data not being stored outside the United States. I mean, outside of Canada and not being in the United States. But there are certain things that you're going to have to look at yourselves for sure. And the desktop as a service provider can help you do that.